Let me
Record
know
on the,
when you want me to.
and I'm
Oh, there we
clicking
go.
record on the audio, and I'm just checking, and
Hang on.
that microphone.
When do you want me to hit record on mine?
Hit record now,
Okay.
and we'll do a little 1, 2, 3 clap.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Excellent. I never know how to start these, James, so I just dive in, and it feels a bit embarrassing, and then the embarrassment wears off. I'm joined this week by James Farley, who is one of the hosts of the Computer Game Show podcast. We had David on earlier on. It's one of my favorite gaming podcasts. Kind of, you don't, just talk about video games. You talk about a lot of other stuff as well. I hesitate to call it shit. That would be rude. But you do talk a lot of nonsense, and I love it.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that for? Because I know David's background a little bit more, but what is your background with the pod?
So, you see, I actually started. You see, I met David on Xbox Live back in, I think, right at the start when Xbox Live first began.
Oh,
And
wow.
just completely randomly, like we were on a forum together, and then we ended up sort of playing games online together, and then we just kind of, I wouldn't say we hit it off, but we kind of like chatted quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then he came to me with this, and he said, "Oh, I've just recorded this podcast." And this was when podcasts were pretty new. There's people weren't really weren't doing them so much. And he said, "Can you give it a listen?" I listened to it. I thought it's all right. It's not too bad. Whatever I was doing. And so that was how Joypod was born. And he used
Right.
to like send me like advanced ones for me to listen to sometimes, and I got to go through them. But then later on, after a couple of years, he just said, "Oh, do you want to join? Do you want to be on it?" And I was like, first of all, I was very nervous about doing that because I thought, I'm
Right.
not sure I've got anything to say. I'm not sure I'll be able to articulate myself. I thought, it's maybe not going to go so well. And the first one I ever did was, do you remember? I don't know if you know, it was on Play Radio as
I
well.
remember Play Radio, a very short-lived online radio station. It's quite ahead of its time, really, for
Yeah.
two reasons. One, it was online. It was set up by Tommy Boyd. One, because it was online. Two, because it really flirted quite heavily with right-wing racism. Not your show at all.
We didn't do that. Yeah,
No,
that
but
was,
there was so it was very innovative in that way. But yes, I did some bits and pieces there, and you guys were
yeah.
on there.
And so, I went on that a couple of times, and then eventually he just said, "Oh, do you want to join like full time as like the third person like on the show?" But at that time, I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." But then I moved to China, and just as I
Right.
was about to join, I moved there, and he was like, "Well, obviously you can't do it from there, so that's that over."
Yeah.
And so then I still listened to it while I was away, and when I came back, I found that Sean had stolen my spot on the podcast.
Okay, so
And
this is Sean Bell. So
yes,
we should mention Sean and Matt because there are other people involved. And so you came back from China thinking, "Sweet, I'm going to be in this nice little
yeah.
cushy podcast." Oh, there's some guy has nicked my space.
Yeah, he totally ripped off my space, and I wasn't very happy about that. And but then, it worked out okay because then they had me on as a fourth, and so it worked out.
It's such a good show. It's so entertaining. You pull a face as I say that, but what do you? It's difficult to look at the stuff that we make objectively. What do you think of the Computer Game Show?
See, I'm never really sure what to make of it, and the reason for this is I never listen back to it. Like I very, very rarely listen back to it because I don't. It's not that I don't like listening to myself. It's just that I just think, well, I was there. I kind of remember.
I'm so with you on that. Yeah,
I don't need to go through that again. It was fine. Occasionally I do, but I mean, I'm really glad that people seem to like it. Like that seems to be that's pretty cool. But generally, the best thing about it is like getting around to sit around with my friends and have a chat. And despite all the things that happen, they are my friends. So it's cool.
I never listen back to anything I've ever done. And stuff I've done in the past, I've worked with producers or co-presenters. They do all the editing. With this, I have to listen back to bits of it because I've got to, sweeten it up a little bit. Oh, I hate it. And it is two reasons. One, I hate the sound of my voice. I notice I do this swallow thing quite a lot, like I just did then. And two, it's like, right, well, that's done now. What's the next thing to do?
Exactly. You just think I've lived that. I don't need to relive it.
You get a lot of nice comments because it's not just gaming. It's for men talking about everything, about being dads, about being partners, about being sons, about mental health.
Mhm.
Um, and it's more common now, but it's only just becoming more common to hear men talking like that. And you've been doing that stuff for years. And I've heard a lot of the feedback that you get. You get a lot of stuff from new dads, don't you?
Yes, yeah, we get a lot, yeah, and people that are expecting children and things like that. And I think partly that's because we've always been very upfront about talking about it
Yeah.
because I see when I never liked that whole thing about, nobody everyone seemed scared to talk about what it's like having children
Yeah.
in any way, sort of saying that it's not like this amazing, wondrous experience where there is those aspects to it. Absolutely, that happens. But also a lot of the time it's really hard work and
Mm.
can be quite heavy on the family. And so we always really wanted to sort of talk about that to let people, not just to let people know that, it's normal to feel like this and to have these sort of mixed emotions about this sometimes. But it was just, yeah, it was good to chat together and to sort of see how we were all feeling, about the different things we were going through. I mean, it's weird because you see, my kids are older than everyone else's. They're
Right.
by about sort of 5 or 6 years or so.
Yeah.
So it's quite funny because I hear now what they're going through, and I'm like, you've got more to come, like soon, but you don't know. It's yeah,
I
which is quite interesting.
My boys are going to be 12 and 14 very soon.
Hmm.
And I'm going to tread around this delicately because I don't want them to embarrass them if they heard this. But I overheard a conversation that they didn't know I could hear,
Hmm.
where they didn't say it, but they were hinting at a really bad word, like one of the
Hmm.
worst words. They were hinting at it, and I heard it, and I thought, man, I got to have a conversation with them about this. And I went in and I said, guys, look, I can tell what you're saying. No one's in trouble. They didn't even say the word. They were just said, no one's in trouble. I need to explain why that word,
Hmm.
excuse me, why that word is so powerful and why
Hmm.
it's a word that we should, hold back for
Hmm.
special occasions. And we did it, and I was uncomfortable and they were uncomfortable. And I was able to say, look, there's going to be a few more of these uncomfortable chats. It's part of being a dad. I love you both so much.
Mm.
And then they battered the crap out of each other because that's what 12 and 14-year-old boys do. But
Mhm.
that is, that stuff doesn't get talked about. You've got to have
Yeah.
conversations that are really uncomfortable for everyone involved.
Yeah, and we're going through that at the moment, like with my son, because we live in Germany now, and he's
Right.
just started doing like sex education at school,
Yeah.
and he's 10 years old, and so there's been some really interesting conversations that have come up around this,
Yeah.
but it's weird because you see, like when I was growing up, no one ever told me, like we never talked about this at home ever, like anything at
Mm-mm.
all. I then found out later that my dad had given my sister, who's 10 years older than me, the talk like about it. Like he'd sort of like explained the whole thing to her, and then a couple like when I was maybe in my 20s, I said to him one day, "Why didn't you say anything to me about this at all?" And he just said, "No, I thought you knew it all." Like it's like,
Right. Uh,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
I seem to remember my mum gave me, she had this little, wasn't a pamphlet, but I wouldn't call it a book. Maybe it was green, and it was clearly made in about 1976, 3 years after I was born.
hmm,
And she said, right, you probably want to read that.
hmm.
We're all, no wonder we're uptight, our generation. I'm a bit older than you, but
But I mean, that's exactly like that was my wife's experience as well. Like she grew
right.
up in China, and like when her mum wanted to explain this to her, she left the magazine on the table, which had like an article, and then just said, "Read that." Just have a read of that.
It's
It's
amazing that anything ever gets done.
yeah.
I will. I got a frog in my throat today. I will. My eldest, and I kind of did say at the end of this conversation, said, "Alex, we got a few more conversations coming up
Hmm.
fairly soon," and I'm sure they're having a great sex education in this school. I was never taught or told by my dad about respect. I can't believe we're having this
Hmm.
conversation. We're supposed to talk about Alex Kid. We'll get to Alex Kid in a minute. But, I was never taught conversation about respecting and
Hmm.
all of that stuff. And I feel I want to sit down with my boys at some point
Hmm.
and say, look, I'm sure you know the mechanics. If any questions, ask
Hmm.
me. However, there is this thing called respect, and there is consent, and there is treating people the way that they deserve to be treated, and
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. Would you feel comfortable having that conversation?
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of conversations I've been having with him actually,
Okay.
because he's had a couple of. You see, he hasn't really had any questions about the mechanical side of the whole thing at all,
Yeah.
but other questions about like emotional side and that sort of thing, he has asked
Great.
questions about really, and which has been. I mean, I feel because I always say to him, you can just chat with me about this, and I always try and when I talk to him about this, I try and talk to him as straight as possible. Like
Yeah.
I don't, and so far I think it's worked okay. It's but I don't know. We'll see what happens. He's only
Well,
10 years old, so.
listen, what's the Larkin poem? They F you up, your mum and dad. They don't mean to,
Mm,
but they do.
hmm.
How amazing, though, you have created an environment where he feels he can come and say those things and ask those things
Yeah.
to you.
And it's also, I mean, yeah, although it's quite funny for my wife as well because he loves asking her questions and like just the other day, like he was just about to go to school, he got his had his bag on, just walking out. Then he just said to her, "You know that? Can I say this? I don't know what I can say on
You can
here."
say it, and if you can't, not if we can bleep it out.
No, he was like, "Do you know in class they said that sometimes people lick things like this?" And then he was like,
Wow.
and then she was like, "Okay, better go to school now." And then he just walked off, and it's just stuff like that is just really weird.
Um,
But, you know.
Going back to your childhood,
Mhm.
get video games. Were they an important part of growing up? When did they enter your life?
I think probably. I mean, there was obviously the Granny's Garden was, I think, one of my first experiences because when I was in school, the schools were all equipped with like BBC,
Yeah,
mostly like BBC Micros or like BBC Masters and stuff like
yeah.
that. So it was always this thing in the classroom that I was drawn to as being like, this just fascinates me. Like I want to engage with this. My father was also a school head teacher as well, not of the school that I
Oh,
went to, but of another school. And so he used to bring that home during the holiday, just like the BBC
oh.
Master.
So, like some schools, you get the gerbil to look after. You
We
got
got the
the
Master.
you got the BBC Master System.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was pretty cool because I mean, he used to bring it home. I mean, that's when I first played things like Defender, like Chucky Egg and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Because there was like I don't know why there was like a disc of like games, but there was, and yeah, and also like all the educational stuff and things like that. But actually, like in general, my parents were not that keen on gaming, like at all. It was not something they really encouraged me to do, but I became quite obsessed with it quite early on. And I used to go over friends' house, and they were always like, they had like, Master System, NES, and stuff like that, and Atari and things like that. And I just really wanted one. All the time I was always asking, can I get this? Can I get this? And they were just like, no, no, it's not going to happen. And but eventually I ended up. I mean, the reason I wanted to talk about Alex Kidd is because I ended up getting a Master System 2, which was like the revision model of the first one. And
Yeah.
I think it was 1989 or maybe 1988 or 89. And what it was is I went into a competition in Rice Krispies. Like the
So I'm
the
so sorry.
cereal.
That sentence has done me in. I went into a competition in Rice Krispies.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. Go on, carry on.
So what they were doing, this was in the 80s, and it was funny because actually today I was just looking up on eBay just to see if the
Yeah.
stuff was still, if you could get any of this stuff, like from before. But they were running this like competition whereby it was the usual like collect these tokens and then send off a tiebreaker. Actually, I wasn't expecting to win the Master System, which I did. That's what happened. I really wanted the toy that they sent out, with
Oh,
it. Because what it was like a Sega Master System pad that I had the sort of a gun that you could like point at things and shoot and it made noises. And I just thought
okay.
that looks. I was like 9 years old. And I thought that is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted that. So that was the motivation. And then I ended up winning the machine, and
Wow.
it was incredible. I came home and yeah, they. I mean, my parents did the usual thing and made me do all the homework and everything, and they were like, "Oh, this came for you," and it was Master System 2,
So hang on,
and
you came home, you did your homework and stuff, and
yeah,
then they went, oh yeah, by the way, there's this.
yeah, basically, yeah, it was.
Wow. That must I have never heard of anyone winning any of those competitions
Hmm.
before. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone winning a console at all. That must have been mind blowing at that
It
age.
it really was, and also because in those days there's no internet, you don't know like what these machines are. Like
Yeah,
I didn't know that this was like a second version of like the original one that my mates had, and I was like, what is this? Because it looks really different, what they've got.
yeah.
And yeah, then discovered that it was same thing, just revised down, made a bit smaller, that kind of thing. Yeah, like sim models we get nowadays.
Did it come with a game, or did you have to go out and buy some?
Well, it did. You see, this is where it came with Alex Kidd,
It was
and
Alex Kidd
so
in Miracle World.
yeah, Alex Kidd in
Okay.
Miracle World. So this was the pack in for it. I mean, later on they changed it to Sonic the Hedgehog, and but this Alex Kidd was the one that I got,
Okay.
and but you see, but I spent a lot of my time when I was that age like saving cash because I used to get, I think it was like £1.50 a week or whatever, like pocket money,
Yeah.
and I used to like outside the newsagents' boards they'd have like people selling games and stuff, like secondhand games and things, like.
No.
Maybe it was just where I live, but you had like the news agents, and they used to have like the advertising board outside, and then it would like people would stick up like these things like for
Oh, like the postcards in the
yes,
windows and stuff.
yeah,
Some of them quite naughty.
yeah,
No, I didn't know people were selling video games
yeah.
that
So there,
way.
there was all like secondhand Master System games up there. So I used to like save my cash, and I mean, I wanted to talk about Alex Kidd, but then the worst thing was I saved like yeah, exactly. It's like £1.50 a week. I had some expenses. I had to buy the Beano and stuff like that. So that's
Of
50p a
course.
week or whatever
Yeah.
gone. And so it took me probably about 2 months or so to save up £10. And I was like, I went down to Dixon's in the town centre,
Yeah.
and to see what games I could buy. And I was really excited. But then I realised I could only buy from the budget range because all the good games were like 20 or 30 quid.
Yeah.
And I ended up with this game called Transbot, which is one of the worst games. It's appallingly
I
awful.
don't think I've heard of it. What I do like appalling games. What is Transbot?
So it's kind of like a side-scrolling, kind of like R-Type, kind of
Yeah.
game, but very slow and very monotonous with no end. Like it's just terrible music and awful. And I remember like getting it home, putting it in, trying to convince myself that it was good, like for
Yeah.
for quite a long period of time, and then trying to trade it with people at school. And then, unfortunately, it worked a couple of times, but then the word got round that it was terrible,
Yeah.
and nobody wanted to trade it with me anymore. So back to Alex Kidd. Yeah, that was the thing.
I kind of missed out on this generation of computers. I was really into I had a BBC Micro. I went from a
Hmm.
Dragon 32 to a BBC Micro, both quite dull computers, always envious of the Spectrums and the Commodores, but
Hmm.
I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And then I must have got to about, it must have been about 88, 89, 16, 17. And I just got bored of it. It
Hmm.
wasn't doing it for me. I discovered, beer and all kinds of things like that. So I missed out on the NES and the Master System and all of that stuff. A couple of drunken nights playing Sonic with a few
Hmm.
people. But I didn't get back into gaming until years later. I went round to a friend's house and they had a black box on the telly. I said, "What's that?"
Hmm.
And they went, "Oh, it's a Sega Saturn. Do you want to have a go?" I went, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." And I played Wipeout on it. And
Hmm.
it was, oh my God, video games got this good.
Yeah.
But I did have a period where I borrowed a Master System for a week, and I did
Hmm.
play Alex Kidd on it. Alex Kidd and I think Sonic are the only two games I've ever played on there. And Alex Kidd, I'm so bad at those games. I watched someone doing it today on
Hmm.
YouTube, and of course on YouTube they make it look so easy,
It's really
getting all
not.
the jumps and the punches in the right place. I struggled so badly with it.
Hmm.
How did you find it?
Well, you see, I mean, this for a while. This was pretty much the only game I had, so I spent
Right.
a lot of time with it because there was no other, there was no other avenues for being getting games at that time. And also, this is the other thing that was really annoying because Transbot, as I mentioned, I had the cartridge for that, so I could trade it even though nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
People in my class wanted Alex Kidd, but it was built in, so I couldn't trade it. So
Okay. So okay, I see what you mean. I thought it came with a cartridge. No, it was actually part of the system.
yeah, it's part of the system. So when you switched it on, that was the first game that would play, and so that was really irritating. I had some hot property here, but I
Yeah.
couldn't share it with anybody, which was really really annoying. And yeah, so I spent a lot of time playing it, and it's funny because going back to it because I've played it like every couple of years now and again. I put it back on, and I just realised. I mean, it was hard. It's a very difficult game, and
Yeah.
it's also incredibly unfair as well in many parts. But also there are things. I mean, now I would say there's many technical things wrong with it. Like the collision detection is terrible. There's also you saw like the whole rock paper scissors like mini game stuff.
Yeah. That I remembered that from when I played it.
Which that's, I mean, that's an odd mechanic, like to have like as a boss like battle. Fortunately, they're not it's not randomized each time. So if you've been through it a couple of times, you could just write down what the answers are, and then you could like get through it, which makes it a bit pointless.
Yeah.
which is not so good. But then the other thing about the game that made it very difficult was the fact that there were so many things in it which were there's no way you could know. Like it was a bit like do you know Castlevania 2? Um
I'm
have
not
you
too hot on the Castlevanias. What was two?
So Castlevania 2, it was Simon's Quest, I think it was. It was that had a part in it where to get further in the game, you had to walk over to a wall and then crouch down, I think it was for like 15 seconds.
Oh no,
And
I hate
then
that stuff.
it would like this whirlwind would then take you off, and it's like how on earth would you know that? Like there's no way
Yeah.
that you would know. And the reason they had stuff like that in was because they were selling like tips books and all sorts of stuff like that, that people you needed that stuff to get through it. So with Alex Kidd there was quite a lot of stuff like that, which was kind of esoteric and didn't really make a lot of sense. And I've still got, I'm back in the UK, like the manual for the game with all of my notes from like 9-year-old me, like
Oh.
as I was playing through trying to figure things out. And I did eventually beat the game, and I think it took several years actually. I think for me to actually finally get through it, and I did finally beat it. And I remember I was so excited, ran into the front room. It was like Saturday morning or something to tell my parents. It's like they didn't care. They're just like, "Can you leave us alone? We're trying to sleep." This kind of thing. But I was like, "This has been a massive achievement," and it's like, but they didn't care. And yeah.
That stuff with the notes on, that's treasure, James. You've got to dig
Mm.
that out. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's probably I've got boxes of this sort of nonsense from before, and but yeah, but as I said, I still have fond memories of it because when I was growing up, like very few people I knew had like the NES or anything like that, and
Yeah.
Mario was this thing which was like sort of far away, really. That was
The
kind of
NES wasn't that big in the UK, I
no,
don't think. It was more Mega Drive, wasn't it?
yeah. I mean, when I in my class, like this is ridiculous, isn't it? Thinking about things like this, my class, like how that's like 30, 35, 40 years ago now. It's like it's like everybody had like like Master Systems,
Master
or they
Systems,
had
yeah.
like like Ataris, or that kind of stuff. And there's not so much. So, but there was still this idea that Sega needed to have some sort of like mascot kind of game, and you can see they were really, I mean, really trying to ape Mario with this, but it just wasn't as fun. It
Oh yeah,
really.
watching the video of it today, I was you go, oh, it's a Mario clone. I
Mhm,
see. Now with older eyes, you can see exactly what they were going
mhm.
for. Was it fun? Did you have fun doing it? And I asked that because not all games are fun. Some of them feel like hard work, and I get the feeling that this might have been a job.
Um, I don't know actually. That is a good question because I mean I think when I was younger, I thought it was fun because I had no frame of reference for
Yeah.
what something could be and how something could be a lot better than it was, and I did enjoy it. Although you see, recently they released a DX version of the game, which was
Okay.
like a remake. I think it was in when was it? Like 2020, I think it was, or 2021, and this was like with reworked graphics and everything, reworked sound and everything, but still the core same game. And so I downloaded this because I was like, amazing. Like I want to, relive my childhood, the whole usual thing. And yeah, I played through it. I was like, yeah, this isn't a very good game. Like actually, it's really not. But I still have all these memories of playing it and just spending time on the TV that was like partially broken. Like in the room. It's childhood stuff, and you
Did
remember that
friends
sort of
come
thing.
and play with it, or was it purely a sole activity?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, friends used to come over and play, but it was a single player game, so it was
Yeah.
mostly sitting there on your own, sort of.
And did you have a thing like me where you kind of drifted away from video games and came back, or were they always a constant going on?
Um, Kind of, I'd say. I mean, I drifted away from console games, and then I moved on to like PC in the early sort of 90s, and but then I think it was with the N64 I went back,
Yeah.
sort of back into consoles again because I don't know, I've always just preferred them. It's just easier because
That PC gaming in the early 90s, the
it
mid
was brilliant.
90s, that was wild, right?
Yeah,
Suddenly,
yeah.
suddenly I remember being obsessed with EverQuest and Half-Life
Hmm.
because you could play online with other people. That had always been the dream. And I remember these really glitchy games of Half-Life where you like
Hmm.
spawn in the middle of midair and you couldn't move. Oh, I loved it. Oh, I
Yeah.
loved it. That's when it started getting exciting. And it's interesting you mentioned um, befriending David on
Mm.
Xbox Live because that happened quite a lot. Did you ever play Uno on Xbox Live
Yes. Yeah, I played it
with
as
the
well. Yeah.
camera?
Oh yes.
Did you ever see stuff?
I saw a lot of stuff on that camera.
It was the weirdest thing. This must have been, I was at LBC, so this would have been, I guess, about 2005, 6,
Mhm.
something like that. And you're playing the card game Uno, and you got your camera. It's really cool because you can see the table and there's a camera and you could see people at home. Boy, oh boy, I don't want, it's going back to the sex talk. I saw both, shall we
I
say? I
mean,
saw
it was like
both.
chat roulette, wasn't it? Like pretty much
It
going on
was
that
it
game.
was like chat roulette. And do you remember as well the Xbox had a voice modifier?
Yes, that
That
was
did
very funny.
happen, didn't it? I didn't
Yeah,
dream
yeah.
that.
See, I was part of a like from the forum that we were on. There was like a whole group of people that had like set up these like clans, that because we were playing like Rainbow Six.
Clans,
Yeah,
yeah.
because we were playing Rainbow Six, like we were playing like Rainbow Six 3. And I remember one time, like there was this clan was set up by this guy, and there was a huge big group of people. There was about 20 or 30, people from this forum on there, and there wasn't enough space, like, for everyone to fit in.
Yeah.
So this guy that was running it just started deleting people that he didn't want in the clan off it. And then
Wow.
this guy came in who was really annoyed because he'd been kicked out, but he was using what was called the Dark Master like voice mask, and he was like, why did you kick me out of the clan?" And it's ridiculous. It's really funny.
I'd forgotten about clans. One of
Yeah.
my favorite thing playing games like Rainbow Six and Left 4 Dead. I love a team kill. Oh, I
Hmm.
love team killing. It's my favorite thing. With Left 4 Dead, you could do it. The zombie game, you shoot them and they're on the floor, and you
Mm.
go, I'm so sorry. I promise. Let me heal you. I promise I won't do it
Yeah.
again. Shoot me in the back. Shoot me in the back again. Um, Amazing that you became friends, though. That has lasted
Mhm.
years and years and years as a
Yeah.
result of that.
It is weird. It's because we've sort of kept in contact over the time, and we still played. See, we don't play online very much at all anymore.
Right.
That very rarely happens. Mostly because I mean, David's playing like FIFA all the time and stuff like that, which I enjoy as well. But I prefer the single player sort of approach to that. I'm not really into the online with it, and I think it's mostly because we talk on the show all the time, and
Yeah.
it's all the time you get that whole thing of like you start having a conversation, and David's like, save it for for when we're on the show. It's
Um, do you? My boys think it's kind of cool that I play video games. They'll come and see me playing COD. I play a lot of COD, and they'll come and see that. And I've got, for this job of streaming and stuff, I've got pretty decent gaming PC, and it's got stuff on there. And I say, do any of your other parents of your friends play video games? They go, no, not really. Maybe the odd game of
no.
FIFA and stuff. But I'm considered apparently by some of their friends kind of cool because
Really?
I play this stuff. And I'm wondering if you're
Mhm.
getting any of that cool vibe for being a
I don't know
cool
about
gaming dad.
I don't know about that. I mean, because my son is really heavily into games. Like it's
Right.
like a big part of his whole sort of thing now. And I know for a fact that he's like the kid. It's really weird, isn't it? Because I remember growing up, there was always the kid in school that had like all the games and all that kind of stuff, and that wasn't me when I was growing up. And it was like, you go over the house, it's like, how have they got all this stuff? And then now I know that my son is probably that kid, and it's just, I don't know, it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, uncomfortable in what way? What, you're worried that people are judging him because he's got that stuff?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's strange, but then I don't know. Kids, a lot of the kids have, they have a lot of stuff now anyway, so it's maybe not so much of a thing. But I don't know. It's just strange because you know what? You remember what it was like growing up in the 80s? It was like there wasn't a lot around,
It
during
was
that time.
rubbish. People look back on
Yeah,
the 80s with, oh, it must have been so good. No, it was horrible. And the
yeah.
90s for most of it.
Hmm.
Miserable. Anyway, sorry I interrupted.
Yeah, so it's strange because it's like, he's the kid that's got all this stuff. And yeah, I mean kids what's really cool now is that like kids come over and they play like Minecraft together
Yeah.
using like, the computer and like PlayStation we've got and stuff like that. And then he arranged the other day this whole like thing with his friends in the UK, his friends in Germany, all playing together like
Oh,
Minecraft, which is pretty
yeah.
cool. Like, I was impressed by that. It's yeah.
I think that is impressive. I've said this before that during lockdown, I let my kids play Fortnite and Minecraft and Roblox. Even though I don't really like Roblox. Pretty much as they wanted because
Hmm.
they were playing with their friends at a
Yeah,
time when they
exactly.
couldn't go to school, they couldn't meet up with their friends. They would spend an evening playing Fortnite and laughing and joking and
Hmm.
doing what kids do. And I found that I think it kept them sane
Yeah,
during lockdown.
absolutely.
It's really important.
We had a funny thing with that, like because with the class, like, I remember overhearing, like, but they had like those lockdown lessons, with the
I do remember the
with
lockdown
with the
lessons. Yeah.
with the teachers and stuff, and then like the teacher was like saying to the children like, "What are you doing this evening?" And like all these kids were just saying like, "I'm playing Minecraft with Asher," and it was just like, which was his name, it's like it was like, all of them were saying this, and she was like, "Oh, Asher seems to be like creating something here." It's like, yeah.
Um, Have they? Has he expressed an interest in YouTubing or doing anything online? Because that's very popular. Both my kids have got these kind of very low level YouTube channels. They haven't
Mhm.
done anything for a while, but all they do is watch YouTubers. They don't watch TV or anything like that. And I wonder if that's rubbing off on your kids at all.
Yeah, certainly with YouTube. Like, as in they always. I mean, my son is completely obsessed with just watching
Yeah,
YouTube creators most of the time. He doesn't seem to be terribly interested in doing it himself, but he's more. He's follows like quite a few of them.
yeah.
Which I mean, I'd have to recommend Brick Show Brian. He's the guy that he followed for a
I
long
don't know
time,
Brick Show
which
Brian. He
is
sounds
brilliant.
good.
Yeah, he's great. He's so basically he's like a like a kids one, and
Yeah.
he used to do like Lego builds and stuff like that, and then also does gaming and things. But he did this really nice thing because we when we were moving to Germany, obviously for the kids this was quite a big thing, to move to another country, couldn't speak the language, the whole thing, and it got to Christmas and we did one of those like cameo kind of things from this guy, um,
Oh wow.
and he said this whole thing, and he we didn't even tell him very much information. We just said, oh, we're moving to Germany. Our son's a bit, a bit worried about it and everything. If you could just say something, and he did this massive long thing, like saying, like, he was,
Oh.
saying, oh, you're very brave doing all this and this kind of thing, and he was so happy, and it was just like it's brilliant, that sort of thing.
Oh, well, that's magic. Oh, in that
Yeah,
case, the double thumbs up to Brick Show Brian.
yeah,
I find the YouTube stuff fascinating. I'm getting into it, but I'm just watching old men,
hmm
generally old bald men with beards, 50%
hmm
of the computer game show, taking apart Commodore 64s and recapping them and
hmm
resoldering them and putting in Raspberry Pis and things like that.
hmm
Um, David, Sean, and Matt, your co-hosts,
hmm
they don't know you're doing this. We
they
have
don't.
kept this secret. I'm wondering what you think their reaction. We're in a WhatsApp group. It's a little bit incestuous. This we're in a WhatsApp
hmm
group, and this was going to go up on Monday
hmm
for the Patreons. So I'm expecting an exciting message from David. What do you think they're going to say when they realize you've done this?
I don't know. I'm expecting sarcasm, sort of, that sort of thing. I'm not really sure, honestly. Really not
You look
sure.
really uncomfortable as I'm saying that.
Yeah, I don't know. I always feel uncomfortable.
Why do you feel uncomfortable?
I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it. I don't know.
Do you ever get recognized?
It's happened twice, I think.
Weird,
And one
right?
time was during lockdown, which was the weirdest thing ever.
Go on.
Because I went for a walk in like the because I was living at the time like in a village, like
Yeah.
outside of like a city. And I was walking, just doing we were allowed to go out,
We were allowed
to
an
walk
hour. Yeah.
like to walk out. So I was just walking along, and then this other guy like walked past me, and then he turned around and he just said, "Do you do a podcast like that?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "It's really good. It's and I was like, "Thanks," like that, and then that
That's
was it. It was
incredible.
yeah, it was very strange. Yeah, it's really really, and it's one of those things where nobody would have believed that had happened, but fortunately,
Yeah.
my daughter was with me, and she could verify the fact that it had happened.
How
Yeah.
did she find it? Was that weird?
She thought it was cool. But I mean, it's my wife that always just laughs about all these things. She just thinks it's ridiculous. It was just, it's quite
Does
funny.
she? Does your? Well, if I'm asking too anything that's too personal, let me know. You do shows. You guys do shows where hundreds of people turn up. You get
hmm
thousands of downloads every week.
hmm
You've got a great Patreon that is earning a chunk of change. Do, does your family? Do they know how big it is? The computer game show.
No, and I don't think I'm quite happy with it like that as well.
Okay,
It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, my wife knows about it, but she's not really she's supportive of me doing it,
good.
but also not. Yeah, she likes to laugh about it all the time. So it's yeah.
Well, I hope you don't think I've taken the piss out of you tonight. I'm aware that happens a bit, on the computer game show, and I think you're great, and I love the show, and I think that you're the best one. Very quickly
Well,
about being recognised, was in a hospital today, and as I came out, Santa was walking towards me. Right,
yeah.
I think it was the real one, and I get really excited. I went, "Hey Santa, I hope you're all right," and he went, "Yes, I am. Get back on the radio soon, young man." I was like, oh my God, Father Christmas recognized me. This is the coolest thing. I
That's
looked
brilliant.
up Alex Kidd on eBay.
hmm
There are some chances they're trying to sell it boxed for 150 quid. That feels expensive to me.
That makes sense though,
Go
because
on.
most people had it as the built-in game, and the actual cartridge
Oh,
version maybe not quite so common. So
yeah.
that's probably why. I think there may even have been a card version of it as well, because the Master System had this weird thing where you could use cartridges and cards. But yeah,
Do you know I think maybe the one I played it was on a card, like a little thin, like a credit card.
yeah, and but that only worked with the original version Master System, and so the one I had didn't play card games, which was exactly the same thing. But yeah.
Um, it's so lovely to spend some time with you,
Mhm.
away from
Yes,
those
awesome.
other
Yeah, well,
noisy
thank you.
boys.
Yeah.
Uh, thank you so much for coming on the Computer Game Show podcast. It's available everywhere you get your podcasts. So it's free everywhere. There is also a Patreon. Do you want to give the Patreon a little plugette? You can't remember, can you? I'm so sorry. I put you on the spot.
I think, what is it? Is it just like
I don't know.
patreon.com/tcgsco, I think?
Look
Or
for
is
the
it
Computer
TCGS?
Game Show on Patreon. Very quickly, I want to thank my Patreon producers. We've got, oh God, I can't read. I've written it in a rush and I haven't got my glasses on. We've got Mark Gidley. We've got Martin Warren, Craig Hannon, Sam Hughes, Harsh Singh, and executive producer Matt Stanley Evans. If you want to find out more about my Patreon, patreon.com/Ian Lee. James, thank you so much. It's really lovely to spend some time with you tonight.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Stop. There we go.